Well, hello, Andrew. Thank you very much for coming on the Early Days podcast and this special edition about the Paris votes, which will be in a few days, regarding whether to ban electric scooters or to keep electric scooters in the beautiful city of Paris. So thank you very much for coming on this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and a great topic. I was just in Paris last week at the Autonomy Mobility exhibition or conference. So yeah, a very interesting time. You know, the joke at the conference last week was, we can't have these scooters cluttering the streets. We need the room for these mountains of rubbish, right? Was the was the joke. It was an interesting time to be in Paris talking about sidewalk clutter and things like that because of just the
It looks crazy on the pictures.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's actually quite interesting that the autonomy is organized in Paris. Paris has been like at the forefront when it comes to micromobility and so on. But I would like to discuss about your company. Obviously your software is quite relevant in this discussion when we talk about the parking restrictions and so on for electric scooters. So would you be able to tell us a little bit more about your company and how you started and so on, and also a little bit about yourself, of course?
Yeah, great. So my background, I guess, has been in mobility for my whole professional career. I started my first business, Transpoco, with two friends in college, and really that was about managing fleets of vehicles, commercial fleets. So we had a really wide range of customers, everything from city councils to construction companies to ice cream vans to salespeople, you name it. They're all on the Transproco platform, and that business continues to grow and to go well. And really, we see in Transproco we're always trying to innovate. What can we do next? So we saw micromobility coming, and we thought, okay, this is a really, really interesting space. I guess our core mission in Transpoco had been we wanted to reduce accidents, we wanted to reduce traffic congestion, and we wanted to reduce pollution. We said they're the three things that we kind of want to achieve for our careers. And then we saw micromobility coming, and we said, hey, this ticks all of those boxes, right? So we saw it as a really, really interesting space. But then we wanted to try and say, okay, well, let's come and make a difference, right? So from our background of telematics, everything else, the obvious first choice was to do something on the IoT or to do maybe a tracking or a management platform. But we kind of looked at the market and said, okay, well, maybe we can be a little bit more strategic. So when we first started, the problems were very obvious in micromobility. The vehicles didn't last long enough, and then the operating structures that the companies were using were too immature. But we kind of said, okay, well, let's just let the industry fix those. And if you imagine it as an exam paper, and that's question 1 and 2, we're going to jump to question 3. And question 3 on the exam is going to be, well, what do the cities think, right? And we almost took a bet that the cities would say, okay, well, we're going to regulate the market and we're going to award licenses in cities. And then we said, okay, well, if they're going to award licenses, what do we need? And we need really to have the safest possible system. So that appealed again to our core values and mission. And that's really where we focused. We started to work on that, and we were working on it when we were crazy. For a long time, we thought we were the only people working on cameras. A couple of other companies popped up, Drover popped up, and then some of the mobility companies started to do it themselves. So it was interesting that probably for a period of time we were totally crazy. And then when we actually got some competition, now it becomes like an industry, and we started to get some traction and to get some deals and some pilots and everything else. So that's where we started and how we got to here, Constantine.
But how do you actually think about coming up with this type of software at that time? Because at that time it was more about creating more durable scooters, which also happens with the swappable batteries and so on. But your team decided not to focus on the hardware, and the software was kind of like all the same, right? It was all white label software and so on, but you looked at it in a different way in terms of software by using I don't know, like vision and stuff like that. I think you also
Yeah,
have like
we
cameras.
just got. I think if you look at start a business guides or a 101, or if you read some of the blog posts or watch stuff on YouTube, it always says focus on the problem. So for us, the first problem was, well, the scooters are going too quickly on the sidewalk. It's dangerous, right? So that's the problem. So how do we fix that? What we thought was the first solution was very high accurate positioning, right? That we could know exactly where the scooter was, and we worked on that for about 6 months. And whilst we got kind of promising results in our trials, we realized it was going to fail because you run out of signal. The mapping challenge is too high. So we kind of quickly realized that high accuracy positioning wouldn't fix the scooter sidewalk riding and pedestrian detection challenges. So we had also been working on vision, and that was part of our roadmap. And then we said, okay, this is going to be the main way to go. And really that's what we found is with a camera system you can offer the full and complete solution. You can get it right. It can work when you have no signal. It can work in all kinds of conditions. It can work in any city. We've been testing all over the world now, and we're getting pretty good results. Very, very high accuracy numbers everywhere we go.
Actually, with the solution that you provide, you kind of like have to work with not only the operators, but I think also have to be in discussions with the city, because you need to, I guess, adjust to what the city wants. Like you mentioned at the beginning, you were kind of like looking at, okay, what will the city require later on with regulations and so on. So you were kind of like anticipating what the policies could be. So I guess you're also in discussions with cities, and I guess also with hardware providers, because you need to have access to their hardware to be able to implement your solution, right? So you actually have to collaborate with the three main players.
Yeah, so really it's an ecosystem. So we see ourselves as almost trying to partner with everybody. So we have the operators, right? The companies that put the scooters on the street. We see them probably as our, if we said who's our customer. But you're right, we completely have to work with the city. I guess in the early stages and where we are, we have to let them know that the technology is available, what it can do, how it works, all of those things. So we do that. We have to collaborate with the vehicle manufacturers, which we do. And then also a very, very important person to consider is the rider on the scooters, right? Because we want them to enjoy the experience. We don't want to reduce the rider experience in any way by putting this safety technology on. So all of those things are in our mind as we kind of go forward. We develop our technology and try to find a way. Really, what we see is this huge potential for shared micromobility, because we've had a huge wave of VC-led growth. Up until this point, the economic conditions are tougher now, so it's going to be harder for people to get a huge investment. So we really need to collaborate right through the industry, and we need the city to collaborate with us as well. That'll be an interesting thing to talk about in Paris in a second. But we all need to kind of work and go forward together to find the solutions that can unlock growth in a way that makes sense for everybody, right? That it's profitable and that it gives a good service.
Yeah, correct. Now, if you look at some challenges that our industry has been facing, some of the main discussed challenges around this time are the parking issues, which is a big discussion in Brussels, for example. But I assume in Paris it is also a big discussion. Riding e-steps not on the road, or riding them dangerously on pedestrian areas. I guess this is where your solution comes in as a company. Can you explain a little bit, maybe in less technical terms, because we do have some, government officials listening to the podcast as well, what your company and what your solution could mean for these type of challenges that are being faced in Brussels and in Paris when it comes to the parking issues, accidents, people riding with 2 or 3 people on e-scooters. Actually, today on the news in Belgium, I saw a video clip of 5 people riding one e-scooter. So these
That's
are
not
really
easy. They must have been small people, but
they were actually like circus people, and it was I guess for like a
yeah,
promo
no,
or something.
that's not easy. Yeah. So
Acrobats.
yeah, well, let me talk about what we do. Really, our core capability is around computer vision, AI, machine vision. All of those names get used, and then we do really 2 things. The first one, and probably the one that we're most famous for, is putting a camera onto the scooter, and then that camera can detect a few different things. It can detect the road surface that the vehicle is on. So is it on the sidewalk, on the bike lane, or on the road? We also detect pedestrians. So if we're in a busy pedestrian area or there's a risk of a collision, we can detect that and highlight it. So we use that on the camera, and that technology is now becoming quite mature and working really, really well. We're getting, as I said, very, very good results all over the world. The second solution that we offer in the shared micromobility space is is parking technology. So everybody who's used the scooter is familiar with the end of ride photo or the end of ride selfie that we call it. We've been applying AI computer vision techniques onto those photos to help give better parking scores. So we can tell, for example, the most basic example is, hey, is there a scooter in this photo at all, right? Maybe somebody took a picture of their foot or something because they thought nobody will look at it. So that's the most basic level, but then we can go right through the sophistication, and we can tell, okay, well, is this a scooter that our company owns in the picture? Is there many scooters? If it's a case where we have designated parking, is it within the painted lines? Is it on the sidewalk? Is it blocking yellow lines? We can detect things like manholes, we can detect doors, we can detect walls, and then we use all of those elements to generate a parking score, and then to nudge riders and operators towards better parking outcomes. So the technology really is there to fix these problems, and yeah, I think again it's about collaborating, right? I think in Belgium and Brussels, what I would love to see there is more designated parking. I feel like there's not enough, and my understanding of the market, which is quite remote, but is that there's a number of different kind of regions or areas in the city, and it makes it difficult for everybody to agree and have a uniform system. That's not uncommon, right? It's probably the same all over Europe, all over the world, that you have these things. So that's really one of the challenges that the industry has to overcome is these vehicles go right through the city, and yeah, the users don't understand that 100 meters this way I'm in one municipality, and 100 meters that way I'm in another. We need kind of uniformity across the cities.
Indeed, and for someone like me who is also in the industry and also quite some experience, it's quite difficult to understand. Okay, I see that the solutions are already there. You have Luna Systems, you have Drover.ai and other solutions. However, I see that, for example, in Paris, they are still complaining about wrongly parked e-scooters or dangerously driving e-scooters, while the solution is already there to prevent this. And now in Paris, we are going over to a public vote which might ban e-scooters in Paris. And I think Paris is one of the biggest markets in our industry. And they have around 18 million rides per year at this point, with around 400,000 users every single month over the 3 operators, so Lime, Dot, and Thiers. So that would be a huge negative effect for those 400,000 people who rely on electric scooters, while the solution to prevent these types of things like wrongly parked e-scooters is already available. So I don't really understand. Maybe you can explain from your point of view why you think that the city of Paris decided to go over to a public vote after having had, I think, 2 or 3 years of a pilot in Paris, right? So they probably have some experience. They could have tested these solutions. However, there seems to be maybe a miscommunication or maybe not, a misunderstanding, because the solution is already there, right? To prevent.
So I think like there's a few parts to it. So if we start with Paris and say, okay, why have they gone to a vote? It's definitely disappointing for the industry. I remember. Even doing, I got invited to speak on a couple of panels. One was here in Dublin, and in Dublin we don't yet have shared scooters, right? The legislation's not in place, but we feel like we're moving towards it and we want it, right? And the panel I was invited onto was what should we do in Dublin? Really, my advice was to follow the guidance of Paris, right? Is to go through the steps, put the designated parking in place, work on the infrastructure. So, and I think globally, Paris has been recognized as one of the leaders of embracing this new form of transport. And I wonder, do they know what they have or what they've already achieved? Because, okay, there's still challenges, but they've made huge progress. And almost seen as a global leader in this new form of transport. So that did come as a shock to everybody. And really, we hope that the vote goes the right way. We just don't know. I was in Paris last week, and I took the opportunity to speak to everyone, right? As I was in restaurants or in hotels or things, I would just ask people that I would meet, what do you think? And everybody says it's going to be close, right? I think the way the vote is running, it seems like there will be kind of between 80,000 and 100,000 people voting.
That's a lot.
And then so we're going to see that there's obviously a huge user base that the mobility operators have that they can mobilize and can get to vote. But in the other hand, the demographic is probably a little bit younger, and it's probably the type that normally doesn't show out at these types of elections and referendums. So we're going to see, I think, is the key step. Then to jump back to what are the problems, right? Well, the problems that are constantly flagged is parking and the sidewalk riding. Okay, and these are the two areas that we address. And I think it's really important to remember that the stage that the industry's at, it's arguably 4 or 5 or 6 years old if you look at the age of the thing, and it's maturing very, very quickly. Like if you look at a vehicle, a scooter that was put out 5 years ago versus what's put out today, they're totally different pieces of equipment and technology. And really, for our technology, these safety systems have taken time to deploy. So if we look at 2022, last year, we collaborated with a lot of companies, and they put us into their tenders for cities. So we were in what I would call the innovation section. So they put us in and they'd say, hey, we're going to deploy a number of scooters. We'll deploy 10 or 50 or 100 scooters in this city. We'll gather some data. We'll show you the technology works. And that was 2022. I think in 2024, everything will be, people will understand the technology, and it'll be almost an essential item. I think we'll be on almost every scooter as we go into tenders. And then 2023 is in the middle, right? We try to go from innovation section to the other one. That's my sense of where the industry's at from our technology, from what I see with other solutions like Drover, or what I see from some of the operators that are working to do their own systems in-house. I think that's the journey that we're on. And if you look at the timeline of how long does it take to get reliable computer vision into vehicles that are in a very challenging environment, it's been okay, but so that's really where we are. And what's disappointing for me is that Paris have gone for this route, which is like the nuclear option, right? They're pushing the button to say, well, maybe we'll cancel the whole thing, when actually what they've done to date has been very progressive, right? They were the first ones to say, okay, well, we're going to do the designated parking right across the city. We're going to we're going to have the license system, and yeah, okay, there's still challenges, but to date it's working well, and it feels to me out of step with everything else they're trying to do in Paris. I was there last week, and really it was a fabulous experience. I was trying to sample all the different types of micromobility, so I was using bikes, scooters, everywhere. Every time I did it, it was faster than because I looked on Google Maps, where am I going? It was much faster to take a bike or a scooter than it was going to be to take a ride-hailing thing. I felt safe every time I did it. Probably 90+% of my journey was on bike lane wherever I was going. So in many respects, Paris is getting everything right. It's just, we need a little bit of help to mature this industry.
Yeah, exactly. And Paris has invested a lot of money into the road infrastructure to make it a better and safer infrastructure for shared mobility and micromobility as well, right, for the future. So it seems as if this solution might not really fit into that policy that they have had since the early days, right?
And I just wonder, do they realize like the positive kind of leadership reputation they had developed? Like if you think of, if you say Amsterdam, everybody thinks of, perfect mobility cycling. It's brilliant. Nobody thinks, hey, let's ban the bikes or step backwards in Amsterdam. And Paris has really been on that journey for shared micromobility in the 15-minute city, and globally recognized for it. So I wonder, do they realize the leadership position they have?
Yeah, exactly. Is it possible to elaborate a little bit? You already discussed about other cities that you were in. Is it possible to, because in Paris, once the vote is done and it's a positive vote for the scooters to remain, obviously the operators will have to maybe operate a little bit different, use the technology like Luna Systems and Drover.ai to make sure or prevent that no more votes will happen in the future, right? And to make it to make sure that it works as it should right now. Could you elaborate a little bit more into cities that you are in, where when you launched, maybe there were also challenges, but maybe over time, with your solution, you were able to look at the data and improve the safety, improve the designated areas and so on. And maybe that can happen for Paris as well, right? When they use these solutions like Luna Systems.
Yeah, so we've deployed across dozens of cities now across the world, US, into Asia and Japan. We've deployed across Europe. We've put it out, and in some cities we've even gone as far as to do what we would call city studies. So we've done that in collaboration with some of the partners, where we'd gather a certain number of trips, for example, maybe 1,000 trips, right? And then we would say, okay, what percentage of sidewalk riding did we have? How many sidewalk riding events did we have per trip? What are the hotspots for sidewalk riding events? We've presented those to a number of cities, including cities in France. So all the data is there to show, okay, this is the impact. And I think that's important. It would be great to get the opportunity to do that in Paris, because actually once you present the data, it can be different to perception or different things, like how many of let's deal with data. How many sidewalk riding events do we have? Where do they happen most? So that's really our ambition, is that we can provide the data. There's definitely bottlenecks in cities where for whatever reason infrastructure pushes people onto the sidewalk. They feel like they've been under threat or there's danger, so they go onto the sidewalk. Maybe there's poor guidance. Unfortunately, in many cases, people just make bad choices and go onto the sidewalk. So we need to work to change their behavior as well. But all of those things combine to give you a full picture. And then we have data. And what Paris is doing right now is they're making the decision not really based on data, based on opinion and what you can see, on anecdotal evidence. But hopefully the vote goes the right way. the data will be in place, and really the ambition for micromobility should be that we have boring growth, right? That people stop talking about it. It's a very, very popular and PR hot topic because the scooters are like the new animal in the jungle, right? It's changed, so people get attention. That's my ambition in 2 or 3 years. The industry's growing, and more people are using it, but it becomes quieter and nobody talks about it. We'll know we've succeeded then, Constantine, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Actually, when you look and worldwide, but also mainly in Europe and the UK, and also in the northern areas, you see that cities actually became a little bit more strategic the way they implement pilots, right? The first, before giving tenders, they do short pilot periods. Like in the United Kingdom, they were running some trials, but also in Norway and so on, they also started with smaller trials, then pivoted, made some improvements and learnings from these pilots, and then they gave out the tenders for a longer period, right? However, Paris, they did something similar, but unfortunately they ended up doing a public vote at the end. Do you think there will be an effect from the votes of Paris to cities like Brussels, who are at this point, they don't really have anything set up yet to do the public tenders for operators, because in Brussels there are around maybe 10 operators right now. It's a bit crazy. Do you think, from your experience in other cities and how you see the market evolving, that there will be an effect from the vote in Paris to other cities, maybe in the United Kingdom, because they have been running trials as well, but no legislation has been made in terms of scooters, I believe. I'm not really aware of everything there. But in Brussels, they are also kind of like waiting to see, I think. How do you think that will?
So I mean, it's gonna have an impact whichever way it goes, right? If the vote goes well and people vote for scooters to stay, that's going to be positive. Of course, I think it's an informational vote, Constantine, isn't it? So it doesn't mean it's like yes or no, right? It's like, oh, well, the people have voted, but the mayor could still decide, right? So we have to see a little bit, but it will have an impact for sure, because people have been looking to Paris as the leader. But then exactly what the impact, it's hard to know, because if you break it down, some cities will say, okay, Paris said no. Scooters are a little bit of a challenge, right? Because we've got to do some parking, we have to improve our infrastructure. But you know what? It's easy to say no. Like, that's the easiest answer for a project. Yes can be harder, right? Because now we have to work and we have to evolve and do things. So some cities will go that way. But overall, I think cities will realize that light electric transport is here to stay, because even if it's shared scooters, like as I went around Paris last week, there's a huge number of private scooters. You could see people on all types of devices in the bike lane. I don't think I have the balance to do the uni-wheel thing. Have you seen those where you stand on?
Looks dangerous.
Not for me, but they're out there, right? So there's all these types of vehicles are coming. There's not going to be less, right? At the show in Paris, I saw a huge amount of new companies bringing new innovations, new types of light electric vehicles. So these vehicles are here to stay. So if you ban shared, okay, now you're into private, and okay, it's much more difficult to regulate. So a ban is not the answer. Working with the operators, working with the vehicle manufacturers, letting them know this is what we want to achieve, and working together, that's the answer. So I think it will definitely have an initial impact. Some cities will find it easier to say, hey, Paris said no, so we say no, but over time we'll get back on the right track. It's you don't always make progress straightforward like that, and if we take a knockback, that's fine. It'll slow us down for 6 months or 1 year, but light electric vehicles are here to stay. There's going to be less cars in cities. There's enough people in this industry that are kind of committed to that. So yeah, we'll keep going.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for your opinion on this. But to kind of like round it up, I would like to have your opinion on the markets. How do you think the market will evolve in terms of hardware and software? But more importantly, in terms of hardware, because that is also something that is quite relevant for your solution. Because I guess with each new model of e-scooters, I guess that affects your company as well, right? Because you need to attach, your camera and so on. How do you see that evolve?
Yeah, so hopefully, we can kind of keep going as an industry. I think we've been doing quite well in collaborating. It's quite open. We can all talk to each other. That's one of the really good things that I found about getting into micromobility is that you can really talk to anybody in the industry, right? If you say, "Hey, I've got a question," and I think only Lawrence from Tier can answer, you can go and talk to him, or you can talk to Frederick and Voy, or you can talk to Maxime and Henri and Dot. You can really access everybody, right? And you can say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I can do." So my hope is that we can continue to have this collaborative spirit in the industry, because that's really what we need. We're kind of all in it together. We all have the same vision of less cars in cities, and then that we can do that. On the hardware specifically, I think I think it's going in the right direction. Things are getting more robust. They're lasting longer. We've got to do that in the industry. We can't have hardware that doesn't last long enough. So really, they're the that's the main theme for me, is how do we keep these things out on the street longer and in a sustainable way.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. And I truly hope that the vote in Paris will be positive for our industry, and that we'll be able to see your solution alongside the other solutions in many cities, because I think it's very necessary if you want to have longevity. We need to have safety solutions like the ones you have, to kind of like keep collaboration with cities and operators in a good way, and also for the users, of course. So thank you very much for joining me in this discussion.
Great, and thanks for having me, Constantine, and thanks for your work, right? Because we need to share the message, we need to share the knowledge, and it's great for us to get a platform like this to talk about what's possible from a technology perspective. So really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks.